Hello, Kendra, are you there?
I am, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir, I can.
The PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm just going to wait for a few others to come on.
Yes, sir.
I think I only saw you. You was the only person so far.
Yes, sir.
Um, so okay, so let's just wait for them and. 6:08. So did you find it difficult coming straight to class after coming off a holiday, or?
Not really, because I took a day or two off from work for vacation.
Okay.
The greatest challenge, I think, would be getting from work to leave at 5 and get home in time for 6 p.m. based on how the traffic is flowing.
Yeah. That's the. Although you would think that the traffic should be a little less now that school closed, and some people have started their vacations.
Yeah.
Going off the island. Yeah. I mean, I was working remotely from home today, so.
Okay.
I don't know how it's going to be on Thursday, because I'll be in office on Thursday. So where do you work, Kendra?
I'm at a teachers and salary qual.
Okay, and what do you do there?
You heard that right? Because I thought I had my mic mute. Teachers Credit Union.
Yeah.
I'm in just recently transferred over to card services and payroll.
Okay. So were you ever in lending credit?
Spent my first 11 years part-time and full-time as collections. Never in lending.
Never.
I had to clean it up.
Okay. So you're doing the certificate course or diploma course. What are you doing at the institute? Yeah,
this is the banking certificate.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the banking certificate course.
Have any idea what you might want to branch off and major into? Get deep into lending, collections, compliance.
I am sort of leaning towards compliance is definitely an area that intrigues me. I did with Ms. Bullet. I did the first level of the AML and CFT.
Okay.
Successful in that. I'm still considering the second one. After I finish this, because this will be my last class for the banking certificate, and I will be completed with that level. And then started looking at the compliance stage 2, and then the ultimate one to stage 3 one.
Okay.
It's something that I looked at, as well as I saw that I think they're running this month or the end of last one, they were running mastering mortgages. That's another area that intrigues me.
Okay.
So, and then it's the dreaded one what nobody likes to talk about, the accounting.
Oh yes, but I was about to say, accounting and trust, because we have different arms, including insurance and stuff. So they're quite different areas in the financial services that we cater to just about everybody's needs. So
yeah, because I think I saw they were running Trust and Administration 1.
Yes.
I think I did see something being run for it. Those are all, to me, they're all interesting because I don't know anything about it. And therefore I am intrigued.
Okay. Yeah. Well, certain compliance is going to be around with us for a little while. And if one were to get into accounting, it would be good also to have a little bit of compliance and also something that they call forensic accounting. So if you do go off into accounting, make sure you look at a strong base in compliance as well as forensic accounting.
Okay.
Because for forensic accounting is when you dig down deep, where you find where the skeletons are hidden. So
Yeah.
our Auditor General does quite a bit of that. I don't know if he has a formal degree, or I'm sure he did some training in forensic accounting. But some of the stuff that he uncovers and some of the questions that he asks shows me that he's quite knowledgeable of accounting and probably has some forensic accounting experience.
And also, actually, for me, when I don't know anything about a particular area, it is intriguing. I always, from a teenager, was fascinated by finance, especially with the corporate side of it.
What side of it?
Corporate or offshore.
Corporate, okay, yes, okay.
I found that to be very interesting, even as a teenager. Got into banking and finance late, but I think I'm early. But I think it's too late. I'm just beginning, because the field is just growing exponentially with the on for us as a country in regards to CRIF, in regards to the credit bureau, in regards to all the digital market, crowdfunding, and so forth, these various different aspects that are now coming on stream, and with the potential growth in the industry. I just think it's a good time to be in finance.
Okay. All right. A quick question here about your the course booklet manual. Did you get a copy of that?
I did. Yeah. Okay. The front looks just like what I'm seeing in front of me now. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Portions of it will have to be updated because of that. But you'll get those well in advance before we hit the section on collateral security, when we're talking about conveyances and the stamp tax.
Yeah.
There was some confusion, or I should say there is some confusion, so I'm waiting for, before I updated it, with regard to how the VAT is supposed to be applied. And there were some discrepancies between some of the lawyers and also some of the real estate companies. But I understand that there's another tranche amendment to that side, to the conveyancing side, with regard to VAT in the works. So I'm having someone check that for me and confirm that for me before I update the book, the relative section of the book. So
I think as a country, we're just evolving in a lot of areas and just trying to catch up with the rest of the world, I guess. Because I think they offer taxation as well. I know they do a course in taxation. I haven't seen it run for a while.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a course in taxation, and see, a lot of running these courses have to do with the demand So the demand for the courses. So okay, do we have anybody else join us so far?
No, sir.
No, it's just us.
Yeah.
All righty, well, we're gonna start and yes. Okay. So okay, so well, the course is banking operations, credit lending, and international business. The emphasis, well, I see we have quite a number of people to join us. Good evening, everyone. So we've had 3 additional people join us. Just give me a shout. Those of you who are just joining, that to say that you can hear me and you can see the PowerPoint presentation. Kendrick and I were just talking, just doing a little bit of talking, not related to the course, because I didn't want you all to miss anything. So I see we have Danielle, Kenise, Jade. Okay. So we're gonna get started. The course is banking operations. You can follow along with your manuals. As I was telling Kendrick before you others joined in, there's a section concerning VAT application on conveyances of real estate. That's going to be updated a little bit later. I'm waiting for confirmation because there was some discrepancy between some of the realtors and some of the attorneys with regard to how the VAT ought to be applied to real estate. So there was some conflicting information. So I'm waiting for that to be clarified, but we're a little bit ways off before we need that information. And as soon as I get confirmation of that, I will update the relative section of the manual and you will have it. Okay. But again, this course is banking operations, credit and lending, credit or lending, and international business. And so tonight, basically, we're going to do a course overview, possibly start a lesson. It all depends on how our time goes. My name is Glenn Nottage. I'm your lecturer for this course. And let me just click here. Okay. There's my email address. Okay. Okay. And a part of this class, we will be doing an in-class case study. We'll have a few homework assignments. This is the summer, as is the summer semester, there will be no midterm or interim exam. However, I'll give you a mock exam. I normally give a mock exam during the summer, but there will be a final exam. And the exam will be based on the text, that is your manual that you have, and the other resources that we use. And the class learning format, there'll be some lecturing, and also you invited to interject. We're going to be doing some in-class assignments, group stuff. So there'll be participation on your end as well. The grading, I think your booklet I'll have to provide that to you next class because, oh yeah, it is the interim exam, not applicable, yes, okay. So it shows that in the summer, attendance accounts for 10%, participation 10%, homework quizzes 30%, and the final exam 50%. Okay. With this course, you'll find that if you do your reading, your pre-class reading and your homework assignments, and also the mock exam, you shouldn't have any difficulty at all passing the final exam. The format is true and false questions, multiple and short answers, which are basically fill in the blanks. So it's nothing taxing per se. Oh, there are also end of chapter questions, and those are very helpful. They kind of direct you to where a lot of the questions in your final exam will be coming from, and also the homework assignments would also kind of point you in the direction of where your the questions will be coming from. So I just want to assure you that there's nothing to fear in the final exam. Okay, a lot of people get concerned about it. From time to time, I go back into class myself, and I have the same fears. So so I understand, and I try to always put myself in the students' shoes. So, and of course, this is summer, so I won't be racking your brains too much. Okay, so what I just want each of you to do just a minute and a half. State your name, where you work, and what you do at work, or your position or function. So Kendra and I were talking. I don't know if Kendra want to, now that the others are joining, Kendra wants to break the ice and be the first. That's up to him. But each one of you in turn, go ahead, please. Thanks.
No problem, sir. Good afternoon, all. Hope that everyone's doing well. My name is Kendrick Mins. I am employed at Teachers and Salary Cooperative Credit Union. Currently, the position that I just took is card services as well as payroll. I recently switched from the collections department, and currently that's it. That's everything that I'm doing right about now.
Good afternoon. Anyone can go next?
Next person.
Okay.
Don't be shy. Yeah, anyone can go next. Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Candace Scott. I currently work at Fidelity Bank here in Abaco. My position is I'm the personal banking rep admin, and that position is where I deal with loan documents. After a loan is approved, I'm the back end to make sure that, the loan is processed straight up until disbursement.
Okay, great.
Okay, I'll go next. Can anybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so my name is Danielle Gantum. Currently, I actually work within telecommunications, KL Bahamas, but I am transitioning into the financial sector right now, but I do work in the billing portion of KL Bahamas. Yeah.
Okay. Next person.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Kenise Roll Frazier. I am currently employed at Bahamas Customs. I am a cashier.
Okay. Next person. Don't be shy. Next person. No one else?
Mr. Nottage,
Yes, ma'am.
Jade is having issues with being able to speak next.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, her phone isn't allowing her to connect so that she can talk, but she can hear everything.
Okay. 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 Um, all right. So how did everyone ask Ken the same question while we're waiting? How did you manage in terms of transitioning from the going to work from after holiday and getting back home for class? Was traffic a problem or?
Well, I'm actually actively working right now. So I'm in between that and listening in.
So you multitasking?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, alrighty. And anyone experience lags? See, the reason why I'm asking is that if you need additional time, you could probably agree to start 6:15, right? And that way, it won't be it'll be fair to those persons who are ready, who are ready to go at 6. Because I'd hate to have someone who's ready to go at 6, but they're not ready to go at 6:15. I'd hate to start at 6. And I know most people become a stand 6:15 and then you miss out on some of the stuff. We get 6 is 6:15 and then you miss out on some of the stuff. We get 6 is Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, but we were breaking
Yeah,
up.
we can hear you.
Okay, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, we can hear you.
okay, yeah. My internet is unstable and oh boy, okay. So we can get this going again. Okay. You're able to see the screen now?
Yeah, so
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All
So,
right.
yes.
Okay. So let's go to the next screen. Okay. So let's start. Okay, so how banks are set up? So that'll be, I think, page 4. Okay, it says here, banks have many departments, some have more than others, depending upon the size and the nature of its business and target market. Two of the more common aspects of banking that almost immediately come to mind are deposit business and loan business. So as part of this course, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at banks make their money, and some do it differently, but generally speaking, you have depositors who come to the bank, who come and they deposit the money into the bank. Am I correct?
Yes.
And then let's click maybe. All right. So then the bank turns around and lends out the money to other people, sometimes even to the depositors themselves. Okay, and these may be for mortgages, consumer loans, cars, vacations, education, etc. Credit cards. Those are your three main areas. Okay, so for residential or investment properties, consumer loans, and credit cards. Okay, that's a good part of it. Okay, so it appears to be, people are bringing money, put it into the bank, and the bank is lending it out to us so we could buy these things. But sometimes things go wrong. There's a flip side of it. Okay, where loans may go bad. You may have to pursue people through legal channels if they don't have collateral security that you can go against, or if the collateral security is insufficient. You may have to go to the Supreme Court, or you may have to go to the Supreme Court to exercise some of your rights. Okay, which means that the asset is taken from the client. So in the case of a home, the house is taken from them. The case of vehicle is repossessed. If they have stocks, shares that they pledged, those stocks and shares will be liquidated and sold off to someone. Right? So how banks operate? So we have a number of commercial banks in the Bahamas. Some of them, if not most of them, but you also have the credit unions, which come under the umbrella of the Central Bank of the Bahamas. And then we have some other financial institutions out there, like your payday lenders and the Bahamas Development Bank, Bahamas Mortgage Corporation, and some of those other financial institutions. So how are banks set up? So again, going to our page 4, you'll see where there are deposits and there are loans, as we showed in the previous slide. Okay, so we have people bringing in deposits to the bank, and the bank giving out loans. A quick question here. Is it significant that, looking at this picture, is it significant that the deposits are way more than the loans, or that there are more deposits than loans? Is that significant? And if it is significant, why? Anyone want to venture a guess?
I would, if I could take a guess, I would think that you would need more depositors to have the revenue to actually be able to lend out back to those particular individuals who deposited their monies, change the banking relationship, and thus be able to take the 90% of what a person may deposit into an institution and then turn around and lend it to somebody else at a higher interest yielding rate.
Okay, you're on the spot. The margin is as high as 90% of the deposits, and we're going to look at that in a little bit when we talk about reserve requirements.
Okay.
But before we get into that, again, you're quite right. You must have much more deposits than you lend out in loans. You can't lend out more loans than you have than you have deposits. Okay. So with that being said, let's look at some of the other services that we have. Deposit services. What other services do we have? Do financial institutions have? And you can jot these down in your book. So we already have deposits in the book, loans in the book, foreign exchange. What others do we have?
Credit cards.
Okay, credit cards. Okay, so credit cards.
Checking.
Well, we get the checking accounts coming on the deposits. So deposits will be whether it's savings, checking, or term deposits or fixed deposits, depending on what the bank calls them. Think of some of the departments in your bank. Maybe not externally served, but they may serve the internal customers, or without them, the bank cannot function. Okay, so mortgages, we'll tag that under loans.
I'd say what, teleservices?
Yes, teleservices.
Compliance.
Compliance, yes. When you were hired, this department was important.
HR.
HR, yes. Any others?
Could it be, I know that certain institutions also has what they call a training department. That falls.
Yeah, well, training would come under HR.
HR.
Yeah. Okay. Now, someone said that they did something in the bank, checked some entries or whatever it is to make sure that the customer account was set up properly or something to that effect. From what area would deal with that? Is that data entry or what do you call it in your particular institution? That data entry or what
Customer service?
In your particular
Yeah, I say customer service too.
Okay, so if your customer service that does the data entry, okay, well, fine, okay. What about your audit department? Okay. Your financial control, your audit department, and a big one, because right now we just had some technical difficulties. You can't do without these guys. IT, that's right, IT. Okay, so there are quite a number of departments. So you got your credit cards, your tellers, your compliance, your HR, your IT, your customer service or like data entry, audit, okay? And then some banks, although I think a lot of banks are moving away from it, they have safe custody facilities or safety deposit boxes, okay? Okay. Or night depositories, that's a service, okay? So, and of course, there was credit cards, someone mentioned. Okay, great stuff. So, deposits versus loans. Okay, so here we have Frugal Fred here, and Frugal Fred handles his money well. So he goes to the bank, he puts his money in the bank. Okay, so for Fred, his deposit is an asset, right?
Agreed.
Okay. So when the deposit is with the bank, on the bank side of the ledger, is that considered an asset for the bank or a liability?
It's a liability for the institution.
Liability.
Why is it a liability?
Because they got to spend money out because they have it in their possession in regards to interest rates.
Okay, but think of
If they were to lose it or like hacked or something, then they would be losing money because then they have to reimburse these persons.
Okay, you're getting order on the trail. You're getting order on the trail. So I bring my money to the bank. It's my money, so it's an asset to me. I deposit it to you. You are holding that money for me. So it's a liability for you. And it's a liability because as a bank, because you owe me that money. That's the key point to remember. The bank owes people that money. And that is why I think the central bank has deposits up to 50,000 per customer. I don't think that has changed in years. Okay. So if you have more than $50,000 in a bank or financial institution that is governed by the central bank of the Bahamas and covered by deposit insurance, it doesn't matter if you have 3 accounts with $150,000 in it. If something goes wrong with that bank, the central bank only covers $50,000 per customer, not per account. Okay. In America, they have something what they call FDIC coverage, and their coverage is much higher. I don't know what it is now, but it is much higher than ours in the Bahamas. But of course, you have to consider that we are a much smaller country, which with less facilities, we're not as developed as America. And so we are fortunate that we do have some sort of deposit insurance so that we won't lose everything if you have more than $50,000 aggregate in the bank. Okay, so it's a asset for the customer, but a liability for the bank. All right. Then on the other side, you got Spendthrift Sam. He's one who likes to get loans. He keeps coming to us every year, sometimes twice a year to keep refinancing. He don't get to save any money. So the loan for him is a liability. So when he comes and he sits down in front of you and he completes his statement of affairs, his personal statement of affairs, you'll see that he has a lot of debt or some debt. Okay. So while it is a liability to the customer, it is an asset to the bank. Why is it an asset? Why is a loan an asset to the bank?
Because it's how the bank makes their money.
Okay, you were correct, but that's not what I was looking for. Why is it a liability to the bank? Remember now, when I said it was a deposit, when I said the deposit was a liability to the bank, the deposit was a liability to the bank, is because the bank owed someone that money. Okay. Now, would a loan be an asset? Why would a loan be an asset to the bank?
Because now someone's repaying what the bank may have lost, or they're gaining the money is back what they would have loaned out.
Okay, let's look at it this way. Have most of you done some bit of accounting? So you know about accounts receivables and accounts payables?
A little bit.
A little bit, okay. All right, so an accounts payable would be for the bank a deposit. Okay, so an accounts payable would be a deposit for the bank because there's a liability. If I owe somebody some money, it's a payable. So it's a liability. If someone owes me money, it's a receivable, and a receivable is an asset. Okay? So if we look at a loan as a receivable, I've loaned, as a bank, I've loaned out money. So I'm entitled to that money back. So it's a receivable, and receivables are assets. Look at it this way. I go in an ASU draw, and I throw my hand every week. Okay? The person who's holding that's a liability for them. Although some of them, they treat it as an asset, they go and they spend it, right? But it's a liability for them because it's a payable, because at some point in time, they have to pay you your money, okay? That is an asset for you because you have deposited, it's almost like a kind of savings, okay? You've deposited, so for you, that's a receivable. Just like your savings account is a receivable. Whenever you put money somewhere, it's a receivable. Okay. When you invest in stocks and shares, you are loaning your money. You are loaning your money to that business. Okay, and then they pay you dividends on it, and and hopefully the stock value increases, so you get capital appreciation, right? But when you put your money into a business, you invest in stocks or shares, that's a liability for them, but that's an asset for you. That's a receivable for you, right? So it's the same thing with a loan for the bank, okay? They have loaned someone some money, and that person has to pay them back. So it's a receivable. So when you look at a bank's balance sheet, okay, loans will be as part of their receivables. Okay, deposits will be part of their liabilities. Okay, so don't get confused when you look at a bank's balance sheet and you see they have these liabilities and you say, boy, that's a whole lot of loans. No, those liabilities are deposits. Okay, depending on which liabilities you're looking at. Okay, all right. So so again, the loan for the bank is an asset because they are expecting to receive that money, and that is why we as bankers, when people don't pay, we have to employ collectors or delinquency officers or whatever we call them to go after and try to collect what is ours. Okay, and that is also why we try as best we can to get collateral security pledged against those loans, so that we have something we could fall back on if the person doesn't pay. We would be able to get back some, if not all, of our money. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about collateral security later on in the course. Okay, so just to recap, you have the deposit. Frugal Fred, what is deposit going into the bank? It's an asset for him. Once he places it with the bank, it becomes a liability because they owe Frugal Fred that money. The bank in turn lends that money out to Spendthrift Sam. It's a liability for Spendthrift Sam, but it's an asset for the bank because they owe that money, or it's a receivable. Okay. Any questions on that? No questions? Okay. All right, so this is what I was alluding to when I mentioned about reserve requirements. I think it was Kendrick who said about 90%, and I'm sure you're using as an example. But you'll see here that there are reserve requirements. Banks or financial institutions that are governed by the central bank are prohibited from using these two categories of reserves to extend loans to customers. So the first one, the first one is the primary reserve or the statutory reserve, and this is held against Bahamian dollar liabilities. And remember, when we talk about liabilities, we're talking primarily deposits, customer deposits. Okay, so it's been at 5% since 1974. That's when the central bank started. Okay, then you have secondary reserve or liquid ratio assets, and that is a tiered structure. So then you look at 20% of demand deposits, 15% of savings and fixed deposits, and 15% of borrowings due to or from the Central Bank of the Bahamas or interbank, that is with other local commercial banks. Okay, so sometimes banks borrow from one another when their liquidity is tight and they need money to lend and also to satisfy their reserve requirements. So they may borrow from another clearing bank, or they may borrow from the Central Bank of the Bahamas. Let me just say here that when you're borrowing from the central bank, that would be the last resort. You would not want to go to the central bank because you will come under a lot of scrutiny with the central bank. Like I said, the central bank, one of the responsibilities of the central bank is, you may have heard it before, the lender of last resort. Okay, so either you try to get your customers to bring in more money, find ways to generate more deposits, or you go and borrow from other financial institutions. But one of the last things you want to do is have to go to the Central Bank of the Bahamas, because that signals to the central bank that you're not managing your liquidity well. Okay. Alrighty. So let's. There's a question number 7 in your. Yeah. There's a question number 7 on page 6. Would you turn it up, please? Everyone is there?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I
Okay. So question.
haven't gotten my book as yet, so
Oh, okay. We'll follow along with us.
Yeah.
Suffice it to say, we're going through this only really to just kind of for your knowledge. But you shouldn't come across this in the exam. I have never used this in the exam. This question is really just for knowledge for you to understand reserve requirements. Okay. I mean, you may get a homework question, but never in an exam. Okay. To calculate, that is to calculate reserve requirements. You'll get questions on reserve requirements, but not a question to calculate reserve requirements in your exam. Okay. So Cat Island Bank has the following. They have $950 million in liabilities. They have 100 million in demand deposits. They have 500 million or $500 million in savings and fixed deposits. And they have 30 million in COB or interbank borrowing. And the first question is, calculate the primary reserve. The second question is to calculate the secondary reserve. And then the third is, what is the total reserve? Okay, so the total reserve would be, you add your primary reserve and your secondary reserve, you get your total reserve. Okay, so let's begin with liabilities. Okay, and it says 5%. So primary reserve or statutory reserve is 5% of the Bahamian dollar liabilities, right? So that's what we look at first. Okay, so to calculate the primary reserve, the liabilities of 950 million times 5% gives us 47,500. And what you can do is you can calculate as I go along and make sure I can get it right. So 5% of 950 million is 47,500,000, right?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Now let's calculate the secondary reserve. And so we said that is 20% of demand deposits. So 20% of 100 million is 20 million. Am I correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, good so far. Okay. Then we said 15% of savings and fixed deposits. And so savings and fixed deposits is 500 million or 500 million. So 15% of that is 75 million. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then the third element of the secondary reserve is 15% of Central Bank of the Bahamas or interbank loans. So that's 15% of 30 million is 4.5 million. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So to do the next step, we add those three together to get our secondary reserves. So 20 million plus 75 million plus 4.5 million gives us 99.5 million. Okay. So our primary reserves are 47,500,000. Our secondary reserves are 99,500,000. And then we calculate the total reserve requirement, which is a simple, you simply just add the two, which gives us 147,000. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now on this final this final page here, I'm just showing some interest rates in the Bahamas. I probably need to update this to see if there have been any changes. I doubt there have been any changes because our interest rates change very, very slowly, unlike in America and around the world. And that's because we don't have a very active money and capital market. And so our interest rates tend to move very slowly. Okay, it takes years. Okay, so you see in December, the discount on the bank rate was 4.5. The prime lending rate was 4.75. 3 months time deposits back in 2015 was 1.07. I think they're down now to 0.25. So they're pretty non-existent now. Residential mortgages was 6.37. Consumer loans were averaging around 14.56. And then if we look over to November and compare to November 2016, so almost a year later, we see that 11 months later, there's been very little change in, well, actually no change in the discount rate, nor the prime lending rate. The 3 months time deposit declined. And like I said, I believe today they're around like 0.25%. Residential mortgages went down to 5.88. Consumer loans dipped to 13.78. At the time when this survey was done, in December 2016, well, actually the beginning of 2017, we hadn't gotten the figures for the 3 month time deposit residential mortgages or consumer loans. But those figures are available on the central bank's website. And let me just make a note to get an update on interest rates. See where they stand now. Okay. So it's pretty interesting. The ones that you are concerned with is the prime lending rate as a lender. Okay. And the prime lending rate in the Bahamas is still 4.25. And so we normally would add percentage points on those, or what you call a margin on those. And so, for example, if we wanted to do a mortgage for 7.25%, it means that you'd add, your margin would be 3%. So it'll be the difference between the 4.25 and the 7.25. Okay, that'll be your margin, which is basically your profit, because you're borrowing it. You're borrowing it from the central bank at 4.25, and you're lending to the customer 7.25. Although technically that's not so, because when you look at the time deposit rates, if most of your money is still coming from your clients, and you are lending them less than 1%, you can see the reason that, for example, residential mortgage rates went down, okay? And you'll see, oops, you'll see that the same time deposit rates went down, right? So so mortgage rates could go down because deposit rates went down, and the banks will still maintain a hefty, like that's 5 percentage points right there, okay? In November 2016. In December, it was 4.3. Okay, I mean 5.3. Okay, so 5.3 profit margin or margin spread. So technically, the banks do not always borrow at the prime lending rate because there are all these deposits. So you know it could be kind of like a misconception that the profit margin is only 3%, particularly in the Bahamas, when it is much more than that. There was a time when mortgage rates, most of you, if not all of you, probably too young to remember, but mortgage rates used to be up to 10, 11%. But they've come down steadily on much lower rates. Okay. Any questions on any of those before we move to the next chapter?
Will we have something like this on finals?
No. Again, this is just for information purposes. We will talk about spreads or margins later on when we're talking about pricing your product, pricing your loans, and there will be a kind of like a spreadsheet. You have to fill out a spreadsheet, which will be quite simple, and you may even have fun doing it. But nothing, no test on these rates. These are just to show you the various rates. This, like the reserve requirements, are for information purposes. See one of the things that I observed, and I also learned as a young banker back in the day, and then maturing through my career, is that what you find happening is a lot of us who work in the bank do not really understand the relationship between deposit rates and loan interest rates, and the banks making a profit margin. Okay, so all we say is we charge all this interest, we making all this interest of the customer, and we're not paying them money on the deposits. But there's a reason for that, right? And so, for example, when you go to your manager, your supervisor, and you say, "Oh, this Mr. Nottage, he's a good client. His deposit is only 1%. Could we give him 2% or 2.5%?" When you are asking for that extra 1% or 1.5% from Mr. Nottage, you are asking your manager, and you're asking the bank to dip into the bank's profit margin. Okay, and so the question that comes to that manager or to that bank executive's mind is, how do I compensate for this loss of this 1% or this 1.5%? Because those of you who are involved in sales in one area or the other, in one form or the other in the bank, know that you have your quotas. So there's a certain amount of deposits you got to bring in, a certain amount of loans you got to bring in, different quotas, certain amount of savings accounts you got to open, and all that sort of stuff. So just like you have your quotas, your manager and your branch, your bank has quotas. And so your manager is not just looking at that one account that you're saying, "Oh, this is just one customer." But how does that one customer impact my overall profitability, because I'm being graded when my performance review comes around. I'm being graded on how profitable my branch is or my department is. And so those are some of the things that go through the manager's mind. And just don't think that the manager or the bank is just being mean, okay? Because banks exist to make profit, okay? So, for example, so using that example, okay, so you want this annuities deposit go by 1 or 1.5%, okay? Where could I make that up, okay? So maybe I have a business account, okay? And maybe I have an overdraft facility. Now you may want to consider going up on my overdraft, depending on the level of my overdraft, by 0.25%, right? Or a 0.5 percentage point, which would kind of make up for the loss of 1% on the deposit. So for example, if I have a $10,000 deposit, and you go up 1% on that, but I have an overdraft of $50,000 for my business, going up on that by 2.25%, would chances are more than compensate for, you know, the 1% or 1.5% on $10,000 deposits. Okay, you understand what I'm saying? Or do I need to clarify it a little bit more? Hello?
I think I got it.
Okay, well, it might become more clear when we get to that actual section. And let me just quickly look in the book and see if I can see where that is. Should be quite a ways down. Yeah, it should be on page 43. Page 43. Product pricing, income assessment on a borrowing company. So, so those of you who may be really interested in that could, you know, have a look at that after class, that section after class. But we'll get to that later on in the course. Okay, but have no fear. This won't be on your exam. Okay. So we are talking about credit or lending in international business, and I'm not sure if I stated it up front, but the bulk, about 75% of the course is on credit, and about 25% on international business. So we'll be spending most of our time on the credit or lending side, and a little bit on international business. Okay, there are parallels in both. The principles of lending are similar in the local environment as they are in the international business. But in the international business, we'll be looking more to the modes of the types of credit and how they may differ from the local, or how they may be similar. Okay, but first of all, if we're talking about credit, we need to know what is credit. Okay, so in this chapter, we'll be looking at definitions. We'll be looking at whether credit is an art or a science or both. The reasons the banks lend and to whom banks or financial institutions lend. The importance of know your customer policies, due diligence, and money laundering awareness. And then we look at 3 key aspects of credit or lending, which are understanding risk, assessing risk, and managing risk. So if I were to ask you, what is credit, what would you tell me? Or what is credit or what is lending? Anyone?
Lending is the dispensing of resources to an individual who's desiring of it with a interest rate on top of that which was loaned out.
What is the last part? Which?
Funds that or resources that would loan out to an individual who's
Okay.
in need of those, but there's an expectation to have interest on top of that which was borrowed.
Okay. Okay. I got you. Okay. Great. All right. Anyone else? That was quite philosophical, by the way. So anyone else, don't be intimidated by the eloquence just now. Okay. So I mean, whatever you think credit is or lending is, don't overthink it now.
Hello. Hi, y'all. Can hear me?
Yes, we can hear.
Yes, ma'am.
To me, it's allowing someone to use money that you have given them, but you guys have an agreement where the person is supposed to pay it back later.
Okay. Now that's sounds more Bahamian. Okay. I like that.
I was trying my hardest.
Oy. You know, in the Bahamas, you know, we say to people, you know, lend me when slow 20. But that ain't no loan. You know, you give somebody or lend somebody a slow 20, you never see that.
I'm serious.
So anyone else on what credit means to you? Okay. Well, we had two good definitions. So
Allowing someone
we had
to
go ahead.
Good definitions. So go ahead.
allowing someone to have use of goods or services and giving them the option to pay back at a later date.
Yes. Okay. Very good. Excellent. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, so we've had three excellent definitions. And maybe I should add them to the book. According to our book, top of page 7, it says, what is lending or credit? It is one, a belief of others that a person, business, company, etc., can pay debts or will keep a promise to pay. That's anonymous. This one is from Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary of Current English. An account with a shop or store under an agreement for payment at a later date, for example, monthly or quarterly. This third one is also anonymous. Money available for a client to borrow. Fourth one is also anonymous. Credit is the lifeblood of financial institutions. It's how they make the bulk of their income. And then the final one is by myself, using the resources of others to obtain goods and services now for which payment will occur at a future date. Okay, so those 5 and the 3 that were given by yourselves are all explanations or definitions of credit or lending. I just had to go and turn on my light just now. I just realized I was relying too much on the light from outside. Okay. So, lending. Is lending an art or a science? Or is it both?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So why do you say it's a bit of both?
like this.
What makes it an art? What makes it science?
It is the art of it's the art of being able to sell something to someone who may not need it with an ability of using a formula or a science to actually be able to dispense it and make money from it.
Okay, so you've kind of like married the two, right? And so that kind of tells us that it might not be one or the other, it might be both. What does someone else say? Anyone else? What is
I think it's both as well.
Okay, and why do you think it's an art, and why do you think it's also a science? What's the art side of it, and what is the science side of it? And you can refer to your book. Don't be
The science part of it, I guess, would be like analyzing and obtaining like the information you would have received about the loan request or for the loan request.
Okay.
And I guess the art of it is judging that information. I don't know.
Yes, you're quite right. You're quite right. So see, art is more qualitative, right? Science is more quantitative. Okay, science, you can measure science. You can, you can touch science. You can feel science. With art, it is more abstract. What they say, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. There's a skill involved, and sometimes that skill or that art comes with time. So you'll find that the people who have been in lending longer, they know the science, but they've mastered an art of doing it, of combining, putting these qualitative aspects and these quantitative aspects of lending together. Okay, so for example, a science or a science part or scientific part of lending would be something we call debt service ratios. So, which is how much or what percentage of the customer's monthly income is going to service the debt. So if a customer makes $1,000 a month and their payment is $350 per month, then their debt service for that is 35%, okay, which is $350 divided by 1,000 multiplied by 100 gives you 35%. So that is something that is scientific, okay? We can actually see that, we can touch that, we can work that out, okay? It's mathematical, okay? It's quantitative, but there's some things that are qualitative, okay? And so they may be a little bit more difficult to wrap our hands around. And so, and often those are the things that, for example, when we say, I have a gut feeling, because you cannot really pinpoint it, but you're saying something just ain't right about this, something just isn't adding up about this mortgage, about this loan application. So for example, if a person makes $60,000 a year, a year, and they've been making $60,000 a year for about 5 years, and they come to you with no assets, okay, but their total expenses on any given month is say $1,000. Okay. Monthly they make $5,000. 60,000 a year is $5,000 a month. So their expenses are $1,000, right? What are they doing with that other $4,000? Okay, if it's not shown in any savings, no kind of investments, even if they were investing it in jewelry, if they're investing it in art collection, but there's nothing, or they, say they had 10 cars, right? Which I wouldn't suggest you invested in, but okay, but if that's their thing, okay. But at least when you look at it on paper, you'll be able to say, okay, this is where I see the money has been going, okay? And so the art comes in trying to understand and wrap your head around, where has that money been going? So on first glance, you may say, well, this person, they're worthless, After paying all the expenses, they have $4,000 left and they have nothing to show for it. So that's when the art part comes in. And then so you begin asking questions, and then you begin to find out, either this person may have been funding their own education, may have been funding their children's education, may have been funding nieces and nephews' education. They've been carrying a medical loan or medical burden, I should say, for a chronic sick parent, right? Who may say, for example, have cancer. And so, medication for that person is, say, $2,500 a month or whatever it is. Okay. So the art is beginning to try to put the missing pieces together. That's part of the art, right? That qualitative, the what if, those things that you can't really touch or feel or put your hand on. The scientific side of it is pretty straightforward, okay? Because you have mathematical formula that you could calculate stuff on. 1 + 1 is 2. It'll never come up to 3, okay? So we look at credit, and we realize that the art and the science go together when it comes when it comes to dealing with credit or lending. So here in our book it says, lending combines the science of obtaining and analyzing the facts of a loan and the art of making judgments about that information, the feasibility of the business and the credibility of the borrower. Experienced lenders focus on key business issues quickly, determine what information is needed, and then make prompt decisions based on that information. Developing sound credit judgment takes time and experience. Development lending to a small business by the book is difficult and rarely results in a quality loan portfolio. So if you strictly go according to the book, you may find yourself declining just about every loan that don't measure up. And so that is why you need art to make these judgmental decisions. Okay, everything doesn't align, but blah, 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 blah. And later on, we'll look at an example of a person who in terms of one of the things that we analyze is job stability. Okay, but this is a person who changed jobs frequently, right? And so on the surface of it, it looks as if this person, they ain't loyal to nobody. They ain't stable. You lend them from this job, they could be to the next job the next day or no job. Okay, but when we in that particular case, when we dig down, we may end up finding that there was a logical reason for it, and rather than it being a negative to the person, it was actually a positive when we consider it. And that is why it is so important not to make judgments based on what don't judge a book by its cover. It is worthwhile to dig down and ask questions, because a loan that may seem dubious in the initial stages may actually be a good loan that you will let walk out the door. And so some other financial institution who have a loan officer who's a little bit more savvy may end up getting that business, and you may not, may end up losing that business. Okay. So the book goes on to say, basically, science involves the tools used, for example, the canons of lending. Do any of you know what the canons of lending are? Have you
Never heard of that one, sir.
You never heard of the canons of lending?
No, sir. The only thing I've heard in days past was what they call Campari and ice.
Ah, Campari is your canon of lending.
Hey, that's what they called it.
Yes.
I think that was covered in the business of banking, I think, when I did the class years ago.
Yeah. So Campari, well, ice is kind of like a derivative of it. The credit C's, but the two most common are the Campari and the credit C's. Okay, and for those who are not familiar with it, we'll get into it because Campari is not the drink, but it helps us to remember what each one of those letters stands for. So when you start talking about C, you start looking at character, A, ability, M, your margin. Remember we talked about those margins, those interest rates, okay? And then, you go on to the PA, and then of course you have your credit C's. Again, you have character, capacity, capability, collateral, common sense, and you can have as many credit C's as you want. Some people say they're 5, some people say they're 7. I say there can be as many as you want, but we'll see also that we'll narrow it down to three key credit C's that you can use and effectively grant a loan. When I look at the credit C's, see, everybody wants to get in the game. So it's like these diets, you have the 12 steps to losing weight, the 6 steps to losing weight, right? You have, the Glenn Nottage diet, you have the bikini bottom diet, all these kind of different things, right? And so what people do is they just take 3 or 4 basic tenets, because to me, there are only a few ways that you could lose weight, right? Eat less, exercise more. Okay, I mean, what are the key things? I think there are like 3 key things that you can do. Eat less,
Right.
watch what you eat, exercise more. Someone said something?
No. What I was saying is that 60-40 principle, 60% of what you put in your mouth and 40% is exercise.
Okay, all righty. So to me, when people start talking about credit C's and papers and Parsons and ICE and all them, basically you go back to Campari and credit C's, your 5 major credit C's. And like I said, I've actually narrowed down. I have my own credit C's. I narrowed 3, and I call them the big 3. Okay, so even me get in the game to get my name on the board to say I say in something. So but as long as it helps you to effectively assess a credit, whether it's a good credit or bad credit or borderline credit, whatever tools you use, more than likely you are getting the canons of lending among them. It would be from the first things. Whether you heard it, whether you've heard it or you hear it called the canons of lending or not, Campari will come up, credit C's will come up. Okay. Then the DSRs in the book, or debt service ratios. And for businesses, their financial ratios. Okay, and then some other tools that are used. So it says these are tools used in order to make, an assessment or decision. And art is the manner, the skill, and experience in which the data is assessed and a decision is reached. And it says science has more to do with the quantitative side of assessing the credit. That is the facts, numbers, statistics. It is concrete, while art has more to do with the qualitative. That is the subjective or the abstract. Okay, and we've talked quite a bit about that. And we'll see a little bit more of that coming up as we progress in the course. Okay. So any questions on that before we move on? Okay, so there you have the synopsis. Science uses assessment tools. Quantitative, it's concrete. Art is based upon experience and skill. It's qualitative rather than quantitative. Okay. And of course, it says here again, lending is both an art and a science. Okay, so other than what's on the screen, why do banks or financial institutions lend money? Anyone?
I don't know. I only know that they do it so that they are able to make money.
And you're quite right. You're quite right. You're frank and you're quite right. You're quite right, because they will make money. They lend money. They lend it because they will make money. Okay, so all the other fancy stuff, we have here, individuals and businesses require funding they usually may not have on hand. Interest income from loans represents the primary source of revenue for financial institution. They also charge fees for setting up and renewing lending facilities. It all boils down to one thing, okay? It's almost like the credit C's. You have plenty of credit C's, but then when you just get, you have 3 key ones or 2 key ones. When it all boils down, what do the banks lend money for? To
Money.
make money. To make money. Okay? Very good, excellent. Okay? So let's look at some reasons that individuals and businesses, but first of all, individuals, why individuals will borrow. Okay, so individuals will borrow to establish a credit relationship, although that's not too important nowadays, because before, banks would lend to you only if you had a credit relationship with them, or if you had a credit relationship with someone else. Nowadays, they don't really matter. Again, they want to make money. If you look like a good risk, as long as they get salary deduction or whatever it is, a salary assignment, and they pretty much think that wraps things up, they will rope you in, as they say in the cowboy movies. They'll rope you in, and or we will rope them in as financial institutions, and have a ball. Make 3 times, 4 times, 5 times more than we loan them. Okay. So individuals also needed to finance large items over time, such as apartments, other investment properties, houses, etc. Okay. One of the hot items now is Airbnbs. So a lot of people are changing their apartments, or at least using some of the apartments for Airbnbs. Okay. Also, individuals borrow to cover shortfall in daily expenses. How do you think that, or what product would they use to cover shortfall in daily expenses? Number 3. If anyone knows.
Overdrafts?
Overdraft, exact, very good, excellent. Overdrafts. So overdrafts are used to cover shortfall and or cash flow challenges. Okay, to purchase a very expensive item, vehicles, furniture, appliances, and also to fund short-term obligations, for example, school tuition fees for their children, or even to some extent colleges, maybe on a short-term basis. Businesses, or even long-term, okay? Businesses borrow to fill the gap between accounts receivables and accounts payable. Working capital requirements, they'll either get a loan to fund to fund a project, or to as it says, to close the gap between the accounts receivables and payables. Or they may get an overdraft, or they may even raise it via crowdfunding or some other means of raising capital. Okay, and I'll say something about crowdfunding a little later on at the end of the class. Okay, they might not be able to obtain credit from suppliers. This is particularly when you're dealing with startup businesses that are new and is in their infancy. They may not have that track record, so they may not be able to get credit from suppliers, or the suppliers their requirements may be too difficult for them to meet. So, for example, the creditors might want them to hold deposits or whatever it is, or pledge some collateral that they don't have, or that they may need for some other sections or sectors of their business. So they may not be willing to part with those collaterals or put those collaterals up. So they'll come to the bank and look to seek credit from the bank, or like I said a few minutes ago, crowdfunding or some other means of raising capital. They may need to also purchase highly priced items such as production equipment, and they may also want to fund a project or expansion. Okay. Could you think of any other reasons that individuals or businesses may borrow? Reasons that they may borrow? It could be individuals or businesses.
I mean, traditionally, I think this is basically the Bahamian market right here. The only other thing that I see individuals borrowing for recently is basically just for vacation, which don't make any sense.
Okay. And that's they've been doing that for quite a while too, in fact. But I guess now with the COVID restrictions being relaxed, and like they said at Independence, loose me, when they're talking about the Junkanoo. Those of you who may have watched or gone out and watched the Junkanoo Rush Out or the Beat Retreat the previous Sunday, when the man say, loose me. So now we're being loosed from the COVID restrictions of traveling, etc. And so people want to travel, and so they are looking to borrow money probably for vacations, or would Bahamians call vacations, although that's basically shopping spree in Walmart and Target in Florida. But you're quite right, vacations. Okay. Any other reasons individuals or businesses borrow? No? Okay. So let's look at some reasons to properly assess these borrowers or these risks, right? So reasons to properly assess the risk of each borrower. First of all, we want to minimize bad debts. Anyone disagree with that?
No.
No? Okay. To ensure the lender's profitability, that you want to make sure that if you're lending for, say, for business, that it's a profitable or worthwhile business they're getting into. It isn't a frivolous business venture they're getting into, or they're getting in over their head. Also to protect the lenders, sorry, not that's the borrowers. To ensure the lender's profitability, we want to make sure that the loan is profitable to us, but you also want to make sure it's profitable to the borrower. That is a profitable venture for the borrower. To protect the lender's image and reputation, we want to protect our image and reputation. So when we want to be known out there as giving bad loans, or being careless with the funds that we're entrusted with. You want to price your loans correctly. Okay, you don't want to end up mispricing it and overpricing or underpricing. Okay, so based on the type of loan, generally speaking, mortgage loans attract a slightly lower rate than consumer loans. Overdrafts also attract higher interest rates. Okay. You also want to be able to justify the decision that you made to lend. So that includes documenting and rationalizing. So to the extent to which, for example, there's no scientific aspect that which you can say, okay, I loan this because the debt service ratios say this, or the financial ratios from this business say this historically, blah, 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 blah. You want to rationalize it. So for example, let's say that you're lending to a taxi driver. They are kind of, there's their profit margin differs from taxi driver to taxi driver. But then you may want to rationalize and say, okay, this particular taxi driver, he makes on average, X amount of dollars in fares. He spends on average, X amount of dollars on gas. In the past, you used to have to factor in them paying rent for the plates. I think that's being regularized now, where more and more people will be able to own their own plates. So renting a plates may not be a factor. But then you say, okay, when I add that, he can make a maximum of X, Y dollars per week, I take away, what is his likely gas expenses, rental of the plate or whatever, maintenance or other maintenance, insurance, whatever it is, he's ending up with X amount of dollars net. And so you rationalize, so based on that, on this net income that he can make on a weekly basis, we've taken 35% of that or 45% of that, and he can or she can afford this loan. So you want to rationalize, or what they call oh gracious, it slips me now. It'll come back at some later time. If not tonight, it'll come back. Reasonable man, that's what I'm looking for. The reasonable man's argument. Okay, so you want to rationalize, or what they call a reasonable man's argument. Okay, what sounds reasonable or plausible? Okay, and so you want to document and rationalize your decision. Okay, why you made the decision, particularly if the scientific side of it isn't there or doesn't quite add up. Okay, you want to protect the shareholders' interest, and the shareholders are depositors. They are the owners of the other owners of the bank who, maybe a foreign bank entity, so there are no individual shareholders like like Finco has shareholders, Commonwealth Bank has shareholders apart from the majority shareholders in Commonwealth Bank. You have several families who have majority shareholdings, and then you have the rest of us who have bought shares in Commonwealth Bank. But they're companies or lenders like Scotiabank and some of those other larger banks that are globally owned. And so their shareholders will be slightly different than the individual shareholders from our local banks here in the Bahamas. Okay, and then this fancy word here, mitigate risk. You want to mitigate risk. Anyone want to take a shot at what mitigating risk means?
Reducing it is
Reducing, managing.
Yes, managing, reducing it. You never can totally eliminate it, but you want to get as close to elimination as possible. Okay, and mitigating risk, you normally is when you take collateral or other measures. So for example, if they don't have collateral, you may want to take life insurance. If they die, the loan still gets paid off, etc. Okay. And then of course you want to prevent money laundering and terrorist financing, KYC. And that takes us into the next segment, which actually brings us closer to the end. There's only one more segment after this for this chapter. So from the break, you want to properly do your proper legal KYC, because you don't want anyone who may be involved in money laundering or terrorist financing placing funds in the bank. And those of you who've done some AML courses, or even we all have to do AML at the beginning of the year anyhow, right?
Yes, sir.
Right? Okay, so we know about placement, et cetera, in money laundering. So you want to be careful that you don't unwittingly become a party to someone who's involved in money laundering or terrorist financing, actually having access to the financial system through your financial institution. Okay. So any questions on that before we actually look at the importance of KYC a little bit more? No. Okay. Alrighty. So the importance of adhering to KYC and due diligence requirements is an essential component of a financial institution's risk management and compliance set of practices. It contributes to the overall safety and soundness of the financial institution and also the banking sector overall. It protects the integrity of the financial services sector. And you also want to avoid making loans or advances to persons where the down payment or the collateral security or source of repayment has been derived from unlawful activities. And later on, in the course, I'll talk about an instance that actually happened with me in one of the financial institutions where we had someone who approached us, and when we dug down deep, we found that there's some link to one of the top drug lords in the country, and we gave our suspicions to our MLRO, and they took it from there. So it's very important. KYC and due diligence is very important from a lending perspective. And so even though they may have done all the paperwork on account side, the operation side, whatever it is, and they may have passed that. If they come to you with a loan application and something just doesn't smell right, it doesn't pass the smell test, without tipping them off, you'll have to try to dig deeper. And if you have grounds for your suspicions, you advise your MLRO and they will take it from there. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay, so we'll end this chapter with key aspects of lending. And you will see that two of them we've kind of touched on. So understanding risk, is lending an art or science? Okay, and we've kind of answered that already by saying that it's both. Okay, it's both an art and a science. And all risks are not equal, and that is why we have to assess each one on its own merit, using our artistic and our scientific abilities. Okay, and that then leads us into the second aspect of lending, which is assessing the risk. Okay. So we're using our assessment tools. That's Campari, credit Cs, financial analysis, debt ratios, credit reports, and quite a number of institutions have signed up with CRIF Bahamas, our credit bureau, and some of them are using the credit reports, but they're not complete because until all of the credit providers in the country provide CRIF Bahamas with the necessary information, we won't have a full and proper credit bureau pool from which we can make an assessment. Okay, we will talk about credit bureaus later on. You'll see that there's a chapter on credit bureaus. We'll talk about that and the effectiveness of our credit bureau and what it means for us here in the Bahamas as lenders. Personally, I don't think that the banks are really going to abide by it, and we'll discuss that when we get to credit bureaus. Okay. Then, of course, then there's managing risk. Using our reports, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly reports, especially those are system generated, such as our overdrawn and over limit accounts, our exception reports, etc. Have any of you been exposed to any of these reports in your daily daily functions, or current or past?
Well, I know with me, because I am a loan admin, I have a monthly and daily loan report that I have to submit.
Okay. And without revealing any trade secrets of your organization, what does that report tell you? What is that report? What are you reporting, or what does it tell you?
My daily report would basically tell me if I had any payoffs the day before, and then the monthly one would tell me all the refinances, all the payoffs, and loan maturities and stuff like that I had throughout the month.
Okay, and why is that information beneficial? Do you use that, or someone else uses that information?
Yes, I think head office, they usually compile all of the information from every branch, and then they send out a report for everyone to be updated on the numbers and what is going on.
Okay, yeah, because when you're talking about loans being repaid and and account balances. They had a whole lot of other reports. So for example, a lender would want to have a report that shows, for example, comparing the original loan amount and the current loan amount. Okay, so if they see that that loan is significantly lower than the original loan amount, they may want to target that client for additional lending. So, so some banks may say, well, if the loan is paid down 50% from the original amount or 75%, target that customer for additional loans. So it is useful. It is useful in that way, not just in managing risk, but also from a marketing perspective. Also, if a loan is getting ready to be paid to be paid off, there's certain things that you want to be aware of that you might start having to do. So, for example, if it's a mortgage, you may now start to look at dealing with the satisfaction of that mortgage. Again, if it's a mortgage and getting ready to be paid off, and you have an escrow account that's tied to that mortgage that pays the building insurance, it would be foolhardy to pay that building insurance if there's only 1 or 2 more months left on that mortgage, without reaching out to the client to say, hey, your loan is maturing in 3 months, but the building insurance is due. Do you want us to pay the insurance? Because see, some people, they don't want to pay the insurance to their detriment, really. Once the mortgage, some people only pay the insurance because they have a mortgage. Some people, they will just take out they'll take out the hurricane coverage and just use fire and theft because it's much less expensive, right? So if the loan is maturing, the client will say, no, don't you pay it, but don't pay the hurricane coverage side of it. Just pay the fire and theft. So these reports tell you different things. The overdraft and over limit accounts, that is important because it lets you know if customers have gone overdrawn without having a facility in place, or if a customer has a facility in place and he or she or the business has gone over the limits. Okay, so you want to keep tabs on that. Sometimes a customer may have issued a check and an officer or manager may have authorized for the check to be paid or honored with the understanding that the customer would be in within a few days to make good the overdraft, whether it's a established limit or a casual limit. A casual limit is normally a limit that has not been formally approved, would have been allowed by the branch or the branch manager, right? Then, of course, there are exception reports, and different things appear on these exception reports. Mainly, you're talking about exceptions on exceptions on possibly interest rates. So, for example, a loan may have been. So, let's say, for example, we know that our car loans, our new car loans have a certain rate. Our used car loans have a certain rate. Our mortgages have a different rate, and even the different types of mortgages we have. So someone getting a mortgage for a house, a single residential mortgage for single family, I should say, single family residential mortgage, their rate should be lower than someone who's getting it for a duplex, triplex, or a set of condominiums. Simply by the fact that when you have more than one unit, it is income producing, and normally when it's income producing, you tend to charge a higher interest rate. So if you see the same interest rate on a investment property as on a single family residential, you would want to say, hey, they shouldn't be paying 7% on this set of condominiums. They should be paying 9% on it, or 7.5%, 8%, right? So the exception report will kind of raise a flag for you to ask questions. Why is this particular loan pegged at this? So for example, you may see a car loan, and the car loan may be at 7%. And we know that our car loans normally stay at 13, 14%, or 10%, whatever it is. But you may find out that it is partially secured by a fixed deposit, right? Or some other asset, stocks, shares, bonds. And so as a result of that mitigating factor, the bank made a decision to, because the risk is less, to give them a better interest rate, you see? Or it could be a case where, let's say, use a name, for example, let's say Kelly's is your customer, is your corporate customer, your business customer. And they come in and they say, listen, if you give our staff preferential rates on their loans, we will guarantee that we take the money out of their salary. And so your bank may say, okay, so instead of charging them 7%, you charge them 6%. So when you see a person for a consumer loan getting 6% as opposed to 7%, then you dig down deeper and then you find out, okay, that's a Kelly staff, okay? But the exception report will raise a red flag for you to question why the rate is lower or normal or higher than normal, okay? So the opposite also happens. Sometimes the rate may be higher than it should be, or it may be lower, okay? So those are some of your types of reports, okay? And that ends that chapter. Any questions?
I have a question. I don't know if it was mentioned. What's the duration of the entire course?
7 weeks.
7 weeks. Okay.
Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Okay.
It's supposed to be 3 hours, but we do, because you're entitled 10 minutes for each hour, we will end class at 8:30. With the exception of tonight, I will let you off early tonight. Okay, but next week, read up on chapter 3, do some pre-reading on types of customers. And also, I want you to do a paragraph, typewritten paragraph on crowdfunding, okay, for submission. Okay, so so next week, Tuesday, for submission, half a page. I mean, if you do a page, fine. But final information on crowdfunding. Okay, that'll be your homework assignment for next week, apart from your reading. And as I said, do your end of chapter. Well, actually, chapter 3 is reading for Thursday's class. Let me put that. Okay, so chapter 3 is reading for Thursday's class. The crowdfunding is due for next week, Tuesday. Okay, any questions?
Mr. Nottage, when you say submission, you want us read it in class, or you want to send it to your email?
You can send it to my email. Anytime Tuesday up to 11:59 p.m. on Tuesday. Okay.
Can you remind me of the email again, please?
Yes, it's G Nottage, Nottage. So G for Glenn, G Nottage, dot BIFS, the initials for Bahamas Institute of Financial Services, @gmail.com. There is on the screen. gnottage.bifs@gmail.com. Okay. So again, for Thursday's class, read up chapter 3, and by Tuesday, you can send it before, but by Tuesday, 11:59, email me minimum half a page, typewritten, on crowdfunding, what crowdfunding is. Okay, like I say, it could be more than half a page, but the expectation is, I don't want to put more on you, because I know everyone is working, and this is a summer class, so the classes are more frequent. And when I give homework assignments, I'll normally, if I give them on Tuesday, they'll be due the following Tuesday. If I give it on Thursday, they'll be due the following Thursday. So you'll have a full week to do your assignments. Okay, any questions?
I'm good, sir.
Everyone else is good?
Yes,
we agree
I'm
on
good. Mhm.
Or 6:15?
Sorry?
Did we agree on 6 o'clock or 6:15?
You tell me.
6:15 is fine.
6:15.
6:15? Okay,
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
the consensus is 6:15.
Yeah,
Um,
6:15 is good.
Okay, so it just means that most nights we will have to make up that 15 minutes. So we, instead of ending at 8:30, we'll end at 8:45. So just so you know that the expectation, so we could get this, still get the 2.5 hours in.
Okay.
Okay. Alrighty. And if you have any questions in the interim, you can shoot me an email at that email address.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
All right. So with that being said, everyone have a good evening, and I'll see you on Thursday, 6:15.
Good evening, all.
You too. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.